It's been 2 years since this day, July 29th, 2025, since we seen Errol, the Truth, Big Fish Spence Jr.
I need y'all to get the likes up, man. Get the likes up.
Terence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr. had their clash 2 years ago, and arguably one of the best performances you'll ever see in a fight of that magnitude. A fight where everything was on the line, a fight where it was 5 years in the making, right? That fight was built up. It's probably the last fight we'll see where it was actually built up over a certain period of time. Until where the fight actually happened. Because sometimes these fights get built up, these guys' names, and then one dude may fall off or lose to somebody that, that's unexpected. But the fight actually happened. Both guys were undefeated. Errol Spence made it to the fight. Put up a spirited effort, but got beat up. And arguably in one of his worst nights. And we haven't seen the Big Fish Spence since. One may question now, if he goes to 54, how would he be? What would he look like? Is he still going to be training with Derrick James?
Seems so one-sided in your opinion.
Well,
Was he not the Errol that you normally know?
Well, everybody saw that. Everybody saw he could have been a different fighter, but
But what if Bud had everything to do with that?
Put like this. It's not necessarily not to take anything away from Terence Crawford because he fought the fight he was supposed to fight.
Yeah.
He fought, and he came out there to fight the fighter that he was supposed to fight. And his victory was his victory. That's what it is.
But that's my point. Do you think that Errol looked the way he did because of the type of fighter Terence was, and he made him look not the way he normally does?
Like this. Doesn't want to sound disrespectful, but that doesn't matter about Errol. It was all about Terence Crawford. Life is about consistency. Right? And so, regardless of who or what, one fighter was consistent, the other fighter wasn't, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So, you can't take away. Terence Crawford trained for the individual who had beat everybody else before.
Yeah.
That's who he trained for, right?
Were you totally surprised with the outcome of that fight?
You know what? Yeah.
You had one of the most dominant fighters
right.
from 2012 all the way up until then.
Hey, man, everything don't always play out the way you want it to, and you still got to keep pushing on. I had another fight 2 weeks after that, so I couldn't even wallow in it, right? Because you got to get ready for AJ.
But this was one of the best performances that you'll ever see in boxing. And I don't think a lot of people would like to acknowledge that or admit that. That was one of the absolute best performances you'll probably ever see of a fight with 2 undefeated fighters. And it was a 50-50 fight going in. Right? Despite how you may have felt about who you had winning going into that fight was a 50-50 fight on paper, right? Because nobody just knew what was going to happen. But Terence Crawford, like I stated, showed that it was a total mismatch. He went out there, dominated Errol Spence Jr. like we never seen before. Everything was on point. Everything was laser sharp. Terence Crawford hardly made any mistakes in that fight against Errol Spence Jr. Everything Errol Spence Jr. did, he had an answer for it immediately. Errol Spence Jr. put up a spirited effort, but it just simply wasn't enough to deal with what Terence Crawford was bringing that night on July 29th. But we haven't seen a Big Fish in a long time. We've seen him here and there on social media. Pictures, maybe some videos. A lot of family time. Right? Sharks, on his stories and, giving you hints that he's coming back. But we've seen this before, Big Fish. It's been 2 years since you last stepped in the ring. And the reason why I'm even doing this video, right, is because this is like the 3rd time this has happened now. This is the 3rd time that he's been off for two years at a time. This is the third time that he's been off for 2 years at a time. I may be over-exaggerating a little bit, but Errol Spence Jr., he's been off for quite a few times. And now one may question at the age of 34 years old, 35 years old, will he be the same fighter? Will he be a newer fighter? Will he be a fresher fighter? Will he still have the same style that he always had for all those years? 2 years ago today, man, Terence Crawford put up a performance of a lifetime against Errol Spence Jr. in a fight for all the marbles, a fight that was just so built up, a fight that the fans was very, very invested in. That rivaled the build-up to, maybe not to the degree of a Mayweather-Pacquiao, but it was the next big thing, right? And now we may never get another fight that's going to be built up like that. Why? Well, because boxing has changed even since then. Boxing changed that much in 2 years. To the point where now I don't see any more fights that's necessarily going to be built up like that now. If Turk Al-Sheikh wants these fights to happen, they will happen. If the fighters want to fight, they will fight. That's something that we used to always say for years over in this channel. If the fighters want to fight, they'll fight. We haven't had to say any of this stuff in quite a while now. 2 years now. Really? Right? About 2 years or so now. We haven't had to say things like, if the fighters want to fight, they'll fight. And, you know, he's on the wrong side of the street. Right? Like, we don't have to say these things. Who's ducking who? I mean, there's a little bit of ducking going on, but I don't think it's going to be as drawn out as it was 2 years ago. But Errol Spence Jr., man, off for 2 years again, man. When you going to return? Fedora said he'll be glad to get Errol Spence a title shot if he wants, pretty much, right? Errol Spence will hop right in line, sanction bodies will move everybody else aside, and let Errol Spence get his shot. That's likely what would happen, even still. But the 154-pound division right now is looking very, very competitive. And his former rival and Terence Crawford has moved on to bigger and better things. The fight that they actually attached his name to. People talked about Canelo and Errol Spence for years. Errol Spence entertained it. Canelo kind of entertained it. It was a fight that was really, you know, they flirted with the idea of it. But now he's a far cry. He's far away from it. Right? He's a far cry, far away from it. And now we don't even know if the big fish is going to look good at 154 pounds. And then we got guys like Jerome Sanders, Virgil Ortiz. 154-pound division is looking pretty competitive. It's looking pretty competitive. It's looking pretty dangerous. Will the big fish be able to hop back in there in that shark-infested waters? 154 pounds is a big pond. The big fish now just hopped into the ocean full of other sharks. Some battle-tested, some proven, some young, some older, some big, right? Yeah, it's going to be a lot of competition at 154 pounds, and his former rival, Terence Crawford, moved on to the fight that he was supposed to get years ago in Canelo. And it don't look like Terence Crawford's coming down anytime soon, even though he is one of the title holders still at that weight class. It don't necessarily look like he's going to be squeezing back down to 154 pounds anytime soon. But only time will tell. We got to wait and see how the fight with Canelo Alvarez plays out. Will Terence Crawford be able to put up another performance like that against Spence? Because let's be honest, the fight with Spence, the bar was set so high, so when he got in there with Mijamov, it wasn't his best performance at all. Just because the standards just set so high. And Mijamov put up a better performance and better performance than most people probably expected, considering nobody never heard of him. A guy with 11 fights or so, right? Even though they didn't add the fact that this dude got 11 pro fights, but he got over 300, 400 something amateur fights. So he's a very experienced amateur fighter, right? He's very experienced in the ring. They didn't tell you that side of the story. They just say he got 11 fights, Bud Crawford lost the fight. Why? Well, because this dude went to decision with the mighty Terence Bud Crawford, who's been on a precision, slicing through the competition and eluding unanimous decisions, right? Eluding unanimous decisions and stopping the opposition. But Jamal went to the decision. And now it wasn't his best performance. Now he damn near lost the fight. But will Terence Bud Crawford, going to arguably the biggest fight of his career, Errol Spence was the biggest fight of his career. And we saw the version of Terence Crawford that showed up that night when the lights were shining so bright. Will Terence Bud Crawford be able to duplicate and replicate that same performance, that same caliber of a performance against an even more dangerous opponent and bigger opponent in Saul Canelo Alvarez, who's been very consistent as a fighter, who has been a fighter who hasn't taken too much time off, been very consistent as a fighter, can fight whenever he wants to fight, do whatever he wants to do. Terence Bud Crawford himself hasn't fought since Israel Mijamov. But he's going right into a fight with Saul Canelo Alvarez. The 2-year anniversary, y'all. 2-year anniversary. And it's the only reason why is because we still haven't seen Errol Spence Jr., man. The sport has moved on and it's changed a lot since then. So Errol Spence is going to be walking into new territory. Jermell Charlo's still around. Right? He hasn't fought in about 2 or so years. Canelo Alvarez long since moved on since him. And now he's about to be going into arguably his toughest fight in Terence Bud Crawford. If we're honest. Yeah, you could say Gennady Golovkin. But it's yet to be seen if Terence Crawford is going to be his toughest challenge. Of course, you could say Floyd Mayweather as far as dealing with the skill set. But arguably his toughest fight could be Terence Bud Crawford. But will Terence Bud Crawford be able to do what it takes? Be able to put up a performance like he did that rivals that of Errol Spence Jr. 2 years ago? Will he be able to do that against Canelo Alvarez? But yeah, you guys, been a while since we've seen the big fish. 2 years, July 29th, 2025, July 29th, 2023 is also a year where we've seen arguably one of the best performances in the boxing ring. Like, subscribe, holla at your boy. Peace out.